Now let us see the rules. So first is rule 61, form and manner of submission of monthly return. Now the rules are very simple and you have to just remember the outline of the rules, basically the form numbers which are given here and the timings, that's all. Other than that, a lot of legal language is written which you don't have to remember. Okay, so the important points we will underline and those you will remember. So it says every registered person other than the person referred to under section 14 of IGST or input service distributor or so on and so forth. These are the exception people who are not covered here by the normal returns that we have already seen in the last lecture. Shall furnish the returns in GSTR3. So this is the form number GSTR3 electronically through the common portal, either directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner. And part A shall be electronically generated on the basis of information furnished in GSTR 1, 2 and based on other liabilities of preceding tax periods. This also we have seen. GSTR 1, GSTR 2, the two forms that are submitted first. So on that basis, part A of GSTR 3 will be automatically updated. And every registered person furnishing the return under 1 shall, subject to provisions of 49, discharges liability towards tax. You have to pay the tax also as soon as you file your return. Means before filing the return you have to first discharge your liability and then file your return. By debiting the electronic cash ledger or the electronic credit ledger and include the details in part B. So first you will debit the electronic credit ledger. Electronic credit ledger means the ITC that you have with you, the input tax credit that you have. So first you will use that and then you will use the cash ledger, the cash payment. And a registered person claiming refund of any balance in the electronic cash ledger in accordance with provisions of 496, this we'll see later on in the refund chapter, may claim such refund in part B of the return in GSTR 3 and such return shall be deemed to be an application under 54. So write down besides that refund chapter. This you will understand in the refund chapter. Then where the time limit for furnishing the details of GSTR 1 under 37 or 2 under 38 has been extended and the circumstances so warrant, the commissioner may by notification specify the manner and conditions subject to which return shall be furnished in form GSTR 3B electronically. So GSTR 3B is used where there is an extension of time granted for GSTR 1 or 2 as the case may be. And where the return is submitted in GSTR 3B has been furnished after the due date for furnishing the details in GSTR 2, part A of the return in form GSTR 3 shall be electronically generated on the basis of information furnished through GSTR 1, 2 and based on other liabilities of preceding tax periods, and part B of the said return shall be electronically generated on the basis of the return filed under GSTR 3B. So 3B is filed when there is a delay. Means the time for GSTR 1 and 2 has been extended, then you have to first file 3B. And after you file 3B and you pay the tax, then when you file GSTR 3, the details of payment of tax will be updated on the basis of 3B. Because 3B is filed for payment of tax. So whatever tax you have paid will be automatically updated in GSTR 3 part B. And the registered person shall modify part B of the return in GSTR 3 based on the discrepancies, if any, between 3B and 3 and discharges tax and other liabilities as the case may be. So when you will file GSTR 3 later on, and if there is any discrepancy between 3B and 3, then you have to pay the difference at that time. All simple points. And where the amount of input tax credit in GSTR 3 exceeds the amount of input tax credit in terms of 3B. So first you had filed 3B and you had claimed input tax credit as say 20,000. But when you are filing GSTR 3 later on, if the input tax credit has exceeded, okay, so GSTR 3, the input tax credit exceeds then what you had shown in GSTR 3B, the additional amount shall be credited to electronic credit ledger of the registered person. The difference will be credited to your electronic credit ledger. Simple. Then form and manner of submission of quarterly return by composition suppliers. So as we have seen that composition suppliers have to file quarterly returns. So for them, the form is GSTR 4, right? And it is given that every registered person paying tax under section 10, that is under composition scheme, shall on the basis of details contained in GSTR 4A. GSTR 4A is the auto population. GSTR 4A is the auto population which will be given to them on the basis of the GSTR 1 and 2 which have been filed earlier, 1 by the supplier, 2 by the recipient, and where required, after adding, correcting or detailing deleting the details furnished, the quarterly return in form GSTR 4. So 4A will be made available to them, they will have to correct it and then file GSTR 4 on the common portal, either directly or through facilitation center. Facilitation centers are to be notified by the government, and if you don't have the means to file an electronic return yourself, you go to a facilitation center. And there is a notification also there that provided that the registered person who opts to pay tax under section 10 with effect from the first day of the month which is not the first month of the quarter. Now this is an option which is available. This we had studied in the concept of composition tax section 10, right? You remember? So if these are the 4 quarters. Now if you opt for the composition scheme right from the first day of the quarter, then the return for the whole quarter will go under GSTR 4. But what if you opt in between? Because you can opt from any month also. So if this is April, May, June and you opt from June, so for the month of June you will have to submit the return under GSTR 4, okay, and for the first 2 months, April and May and then June. So if you are opting for composition scheme from the month of June, from 1st of June, then June return for this month it will go under GSTR 4. And then you continue with the composition scheme. So for here the whole quarter you will file under GSTR 4, GSTR 4, GSTR 4 as the case may be. But what about these 2 months? For these 2 months you will file the normal return under GSTR 3. Okay. So that's what is given here in the proviso, that if you opt to pay tax under section 10 with effect from the first day of a month which is not the first month of the quarter, okay, shall furnish the return under GSTR 4 for that period of the quarter for which he has paid tax under section 10. So you have paid tax under composition scheme for the month of June. So for the month of June you will file return under GSTR 4 and shall furnish the returns as applicable to him for the period of the quarter prior to opting to pay tax under section 10. So for these 2 months when you were paying tax under section 9, you will have to file your return under GSTR 3. Simple. Okay. Then moving ahead, every registered person furnishing return under sub-rule 1 shall discharge his tax liability also. So you have to discharge tax liability also on quarterly basis before filing your return, either by debiting electronic cash ledger only, because you are composition dealer, so there is no question of ITC, so there is no question of electronic credit ledger. So for people who are paying tax under composition scheme, they have to pay by cash only, so it will be only electronic cash ledger. And the return furnished under 1 shall include the invoice wise interstate and intrastate inward supplies received from registered and unregistered persons and consolidated details of the outward supplies made. So they have to show two things. The inward supplies will be invoice wise and the outward supply will be consolidated for the whole quarter. And the registered person who has opted to pay tax under section 10 from the beginning of the financial year shall, where required, furnish details of outward and inward supplies and returns under Rule 59, 60 and 61 relating to period during which the person was liable to furnish such returns, and returns till the due date of furnishing the return for the month of September of the succeeding financial year, or furnishing annual return of the preceding financial year, whichever is earlier. Means this year you are paying tax under composition scheme, but last year you may be paying tax under normal scheme. So for that period, that is the last year, returns can be called for under the normal scheme and you have to submit them, and the time for submission will be that September, due date of September return, or the annual return, whichever is earlier. So that is simple. And all the details can be also called for regarding inward and outward supplies for the preceding financial year. So that's fine. And the explanation says, for the purpose of this sub-rule, it is hereby declared that the person shall not be eligible to avail input tax credit on receipt of invoices or debit notes from the supplier for the period prior to his opting for the composition scheme. What it means is that if some old invoices have been received later on when you have opted for the composition scheme, you will not be allowed to take credit of those invoices because now you are in composition scheme. So if you have to take credit, you have to take credit for the last financial year. You cannot take credit in the current financial year because current financial year you are in composition scheme. So even on the basis of the past invoices, you cannot take credit now. And lastly, it says a registered person opting to withdraw from the composition scheme at his own motion, means of his own will, or where the option is withdrawn at the instance of the officer that we have seen in section 10, shall, where required, furnish the details relating to period prior to his opting for payment of tax under section 9 in GSTR 4 till the due date of furnishing the return for the quarter ending September of the succeeding financial year, or furnishing annual return, whichever is earlier. So suppose if you opt out in a particular quarter, in between a particular quarter. So say for example you are opting out on 2nd of March. So the quarter in which you are opting out is January, February, March. So from January till 2nd of March, you can file your return in form GSTR 4. And from 3rd of March till 31st March, you will file monthly return under GSTR 3. Simple. And this return GSTR 4 can be filed in the same way up to the due date for next September month, or the annual return, whichever is earlier. That is a common point for everyone. Then next is for non-resident taxable persons, 63. Just remember the form number, that's it. Form number GSTR 5 they have to use, and that's it. And pay the tax also, and within 20 days after the end of the tax period, or within 7 days after the last day of the validity period of registration, whichever is earlier. This we have already discussed. Then Rule 64 is given. Form and manner of submission of return by persons providing OIDR. OIDR have to also file the return. Form GSTR 5A on or before the 20th day of the month succeeding the calendar month for which the return is made. Then for input service distributors, Rule 65 says that they also have to file their return in Form 6A. 6A will be the auto population, then you have to file in GSTR 6. So as you can see, you don't have to basically remember these rules. The table that we have seen already, That is very important. It covers all these points. And TDS people, GSTR 7. That's it. That's it. You have to remember. And then you have to give the TDS certificate to the deductee electronically. And rule 67 is for ECO, the electronic commerce operator. GSTR 8 is the form that they have to submit, containing details of supplies affected through such ECO. I mean, who are the suppliers who have made supplies through me, through my portal, and the amount of tax collected, the amount of tax that you have collected from them. That's it. And then you have to give them certificate of tax collection also. All these are simple points. So these rules are simple. Just read them once and remember the form numbers and the due dates. Two important points to remember. Then comes section 40. First return. Every registered person who has made outward supplies in the period between the date on which he became liable for registration till the date on which registration has been granted shall declare the same in the first return furnished by him after grant of registration. So this is the same thing we have discussed many times before, that you become liable on a particular day when your turnover crosses 10 or 20 lakhs. Then within next 30 days you make an application for registration, then you are granted registration. So there is this time when you become liable till the date you are granted registration. These details will be mentioned in your first return. Simple. Then rule 78, matching of details furnished by electronic commerce operator with the details furnished by supplier. This is one point, that following details relating to supplies made through an ECO as declared in GSTR 8 shall be matched with the corresponding details of the actual supplier in GSTR 1. So if you are the actual supplier and you are supplying goods through the electronic commerce operator, so electronic commerce operator will give details in GSTR 8 that Farooq Haq has supplied so much goods through me, and Farooq Haq will give his outwards details in GSTR 1. So these two should be matched. If I say that I have supplied goods worth 50 lakhs through ECO, then ECO should also mention the same figure, that Farooq Haq has supplied goods worth 80 lakhs through me, right? And if there is any mismatch, then it will be checked that who is wrong. State of place of supply and the net taxable value. Two things will be checked. Ek to state where the supply has been made, place of supply, which state is the place of supply, and net taxable value. State will be checked to ascertain whether it is to be charged with CGST as GST or IGST, interstate, intrastate, and taxable value for the purpose of the amount of tax. Provided that where the time limit for furnishing GSTR 1 has been extended, the date of matching of the above mentioned details shall be extended accordingly, obviously. And provided further that the Commissioner may, on the recommendation of the Council, by order extend the date of matching to such date as may be specified therein. You can get extension of time for matching. And then communication and rectification of discrepancy. Any discrepancy in the details furnished by the operator and those declared by the supplier shall be made available to the supplier electronically in MIS 3. So if Farooq Haq is the supplier and electronic portal is something like ABC. So if ABC has reported supplies of 20 lakhs by Farooq Haq through that portal, and I show in my outward supply GSTR 1 that I have supplied only goods worth 18 lakhs through them. So I am showing 18, they are showing 20. So there is a mismatch. So it will be informed to me. So shall be made available to supplier in MIS 3 and to the ECO in MIS 4. So one copy will be sent to me and one copy will be sent to ECO. So out of two of us, somebody may be wrong. If I am right that actual supply is of 18 lakhs only, then they have to rectify. The ECO will have to rectify 20 to 18. Or if they are right, then I have to rectify my 18 to 20. Right? So both of us will be informed. GST MIS 3 and MIS 4 on the common portal on or before the last day of the month in which the matching has been carried out. So if the matching is done in say July, then this information will be sent before the end of the month, that is by 31st July. And a supplier to whom any discrepancy is made available under subrule 1 may make suitable rectifications in the statement of outward supplies, that is GSTR 1, to be furnished for the month in which the discrepancy is made available. So I'll make suitable rectification entries in GSTR 1 for July month. Now the actual supply may have been taken in May, but the reconciliation is done in July, so we'll have to mention it in the return of July. So if this month in which it was notified was say July, so then I'll have to also make rectification entries in the return for the month of July. And an operator to whom the discrepancy is made available under 1 may make suitable rectifications in the statement to be furnished for the month in which the discrepancy is made available, means again July. So either I am wrong or the operator is wrong, somebody is wrong. So whoever is wrong will rectify. Simple. And where the discrepancy is not rectified under 2 or 3, I am saying that the supply is 18 lakhs only, and portal is saying that the supply is 20 lakhs only. So none of us is ready to accept the mistake. None of us is ready to make rectification. Then what will happen? An amount to the extent of discrepancy shall be added to the output tax liability of the supplier in return in form GSTR 3 for the month succeeding the month in which the discrepancy are made available. So if the discrepancy was made available to us in the month of July and none of us rectify, then that 2 lakhs will be added to my liability, my output tax liability, means value will be added, so corresponding GST will be added to the liability in the next month, that is in the month of August. So in the month succeeding the month in which the details of discrepancy are made available, and such addition to the output tax liability and interest payable thereon shall be made available to the supplier electronically in MIS 3. So that will be made available to me in MIS 3, and this will be added in the month of August. Understood? And if the mistake is a reverse mistake, I am showing that I have supplied goods of 20 lakh and the portal is saying 18 lakhs, then nothing will happen because I am already paying more tax. So government is already getting more tax, then nothing. No rectification needs to be done. Then rule 82 is there, details of inward supplies of persons having UIN. These are those embassies, remember, United Nations and embassies of foreign governments in India and those people who are having UIN. So every person who has been issued UIN and claims refund, remember they claim refund of taxes paid on their inputs, their inward supplies, and claims refund of taxes paid on his inward supplies shall furnish the details of such supplies of taxable goods or service of both electronically in GSTR 11. They also have to file a form GSTR 11 along with the application for such a refund claim through the common portal, either directly or through facilitation center. And every person who has been issued a UIN for the purpose other than refund of the taxes paid under taxes paid shall furnish the details of inward supplies of taxable goods or service of both as may be required in GSTR 11. So they can also submit. People who are not claiming refund but they are also given unique identity number, then they also have to file GSTR 11 for their inward supplies. Then comes section 44, that is annual return. Finally, we have seen this many times before in all those time periods. So finally it comes annual return. Every registered person, again other than ISD, then 5152 TDS TCS, casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. So other than these means these people will not be covered here in subsection 1. Okay. So every registered person here means the normal person like Farooqa classes who pay tax under section 9. Okay, or maybe section 10, composition dealer. Composition dealers and normal both have to file annual returns. Who don't have to file? Input service distributors, exceptions are ISD, then TDS, TCS, then CTP, casual taxable person, and NRTP, non-resident taxable person. These are the 5 exceptions. Shall furnish an annual return for every financial year electronically in such form and manner as may be prescribed before the 31st day of December following the end of the financial year. This is the due date. So if this is the financial year, then from here the next 31st December. And every registered person who is required to get his accounts audited in accordance with section 35, this we have seen, electronically, the annual return under subsection 1 along with a copy of the audited annual accounts. So they have to submit audited annual accounts also, and reconciliation statement reconciling the value of supplies declared in the return furnished for the financial year and the audited annual financial statement. So if there is a difference between the value that we have shown in the return, the annual return, and the audited financial statement, then we have to show a reconciliation of that, and such other particulars as may be prescribed. So for people who require audit, they'll have to submit annual return along with the annual audited accounts. Means they have to attach annual audited accounts along with the annual return. Then there is rule 80, annual return. Every registered person other than the input service distributor, means the normal registered persons, the suppliers, then a person paying tax under section 51 or 52. So these are the exceptions: ISD, then person paying required to deduct tax at source or collect tax at source, TCS, then casual taxable person, CTP, and NRTP. So excluding these people, all other people shall furnish an annual return as specified in subsection 1 of section 44 electronically in form GSTR 9 through the common portal, either directly or through facilitation center notified by the commissioner. Simple. So what the rule does is it gives the form numbers. So normal taxpayers have to use form GSTR 9, and provided that a person paying tax under section 10 means the composition scheme shall furnish annual return in GSTR 9A, and every electronic commerce operator ECO required to collect tax at source, means the people who are required to collect tax at source under section 52, shall furnish annual statement referred to in subsection 5 of the said section in GSTR 9B, and every registered person other than those referred to in 35(5) whose aggregate turnover during the financial year exceeds 2 crore rupees shall get his accounts audited as specified under subsection 5 of section 35 that we have seen in the last lecture, and he shall furnish a copy of the audited annual accounts and a reconciliation statement duly certified in form 9C electronically. So they have to additionally submit 9C, people who are required to get their accounts audited. Very simple. Then final return is there for people whose registration is cancelled. If your registration gets cancelled or terminated, then you have to submit your final return within 3 months of the date of cancellation, okay, or the date of order of cancellation, whichever is later. In such form and manner is prescribed, and that form is prescribed below in Rule 81, form number GSTR 10. And then a few other sections are there. Section 46 is there, notice to return defaulters. Person who fails to furnish returns under 39 or 44 or 45, a notice shall be issued requiring him to furnish such return within 15 days of the receipt of notice, in such form as may be prescribed. So notice can be given, and the form of the notice is GSTR 3A. And then late fee. Any registered person who fails to furnish the details of outward or inward supplies as required by 37, 38 or returns under 39 or 45 by the due date shall pay a late fee of 100 rupees for every day during which the default continues, subject to a maximum of 5,000 rupees. So there is 100 rupees per day of late fees, subject to maximum of 5,000. But there is waiver of fees. There are a lot of notifications waiving off this 100 rupees, or rather we can say minimizing that 100 rupees, and they are given there. For form GSTR 3B, notification number is 64/17, and for GSTR 4 also, GSTR 1 also, GSTR 5 also, and GSTR 6 also. So all of them are notified in a different notification, so notification numbers are given which you don't have to remember, which have reduced the maximum fees to 25 rupees for every day. 25 rupees every day, subject to maximum of 5,000. That remains the same. And where CGST payable is nil, if suppose you have nil liability, then it is reduced to 10 rupees per day. Instead of 25, it will be 10 rupees per day. So normal section says 100 rupees, but the notifications have reduced it to 25 or 10 as the case may be. So 10 because you don't have to pay any CGST. If there is no liability to pay CGST, then okay, it is reduced to 10 rupees. But this 10 rupees is not applicable for GSTR 6. Okay. So likewise it is there. And second point says any registered person who fails to furnish the return required under section 44, that is annual return by the due date, shall be liable to pay late fee of 100 rupees for every day during which the failure continues, subject to maximum of an amount calculated at 0.25% of his turnover in the state or union territory. So for late filing of annual return, the maximum is 0.25% of turnover. So it will be 100 rupees per day, subject to maximum of 0.25% of turnover. So that is given there then. For late filing, the complete analysis along with the reduction. So for details of outward supply under section 37, 100 rupees per day, subject to maximum of 5,000. Then inward supplies, 100 rupees per day, subject to maximum of 5,000. Inward supplies section is 38. Then monthly return 39, it is 100 rupees per day, subject to maximum 5,000. But for 3B and 4, it is restricted to 25 per day or 10 per day respectively. Then in case of cancellation of registration, section 45, 100 rupees, subject to maximum 5,000. Annual return 100 rupees, but maximum 0.25% of turnover in the state or union territory. So all these you have to remember by heart. Question may come 2 marks. And then the definition of turnover is given. That turnover in a state or union territory means the aggregate value of all taxable supplies, excluding the value of inward supplies on which tax is payable on reverse charge. This definition of turnover we have seen many times now. And exempt supplies. Turnover includes exempt supplies. made within a state or union territory by a taxable person, then export of goods or services or both, and interstate supplies of the goods, but excludes the taxes. In short, it is also given. Then comes section 48, that is goods and service tax practitioners. Goods and service tax practitioners are people who are appointed by the approved by the CBIC for the purpose of helping the people in filing returns and all other procedures. Okay, so let's see. Very simple section and rule which defines who is a practitioner, who can become a practitioner, and what are the services that he can provide. So a small theory question can come on this. So firstly, section says that the manner of approval of goods and service tax practitioners, their eligibility condition, means what kind of qualification they must hold and what kind of exam they should pass. Then duties and obligations, manner of removal, if he is not performing in the correct way, then how the CBIC can remove him, and other conditions relevant for their functioning shall be such as may be prescribed. So all these things will be prescribed in the rules. Then a registered person may authorize, registered person means you and me, the GST payers, may authorize an approved goods and service tax practitioner to furnish the details of outward supply under section 37, the return under section 37, the outward supplies, then details of inward supplies under section 38, return under section 39 or 44 or 45, and to perform such other functions in such manner as may be prescribed. So from time to time more things can be done by the GST practitioners as may be prescribed. More powers can be granted to him. And notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 2, the responsibility for correctness of any particulars furnished in the return or other details filed by the practitioners shall continue to rest with the registered person on whose behalf such returns and details are furnished. So the responsibility for correctness shall fall on the registered person. Means the GST practitioner will not be held responsible for any mistake in the particulars. Okay, so good for GST practitioners, they are not held liable for mistakes. And then the rules is given prescribing the conditions and the eligibilities of person who can be appointed as a GST practitioner. So see what are these conditions. It says an application in form GST PCT1 may be made electronically through the PCT for practitioner, PCT means practitioner, through the common portal felicitation center. Okay, by any person who, now who can become a practitioner? See, by any person who is a citizen of India. He should be a citizen of India, like Farooq is a citizen of India. Person of sound mind. Yes, I am a person of sound mind. Is not adjudicated as an insolvent, means I should be a solvent person. Has not been convicted for by any competent court and satisfies any of the following conditions, namely that he is a retired, has not been convicted by any competent court, means I have not been convicted for any offence in the past. So I satisfy all these 4 conditions. I am a citizen of India, I am a person of sound mind, I can hear everything, means I am a sound mind, I am not adjudicated as an insolvent any time in my life, and I have not been convicted for any offence by any court in India. Okay, so I am satisfying all these 4 conditions. Now, and so these 4 are the primary conditions. To become a practitioner, plus satisfies any of the following conditions. So plus I have to satisfy any of the following. A, that he is a retired officer of the commercial tax department of any state government, means the old VAT laws which were there, they were called as commercial tax departments. So people who have retired from there, they were commissioners, assistant, deputy commissioners in the past, and they have retired now. So after retirement they can act as GST practitioners. Or the CBEC, Department of Revenue, Government of India, means who are employees of CBEC, who during his service under the government had worked in a post not lower than the rank of Group B gazetted officer for a period of not less than 2 years. So don't go much in deep who is a Group B officer, forget that, just remember Group B. So you have been a officer of the commercial tax department of the state government, or you have worked under CBC, okay, in the position of Group B, in the position of Group B gazetted officer for at least 2 years before your retirement, and you satisfy all these 4 conditions. So these 4 are primary conditions, plus you are this. So this 4 plus this, then you can become a GST practitioner. Or if you were not the gazetted officer, then that he has been enrolled as a sales tax practitioner or tax return preparer under the existing law for the period of not less than 5 years. Means you are already acting as a sales tax practitioner under the Purana sales tax law, the old sales tax law, for a period of 5 years. Or if you are not even this, don't satisfy A and B, then satisfy C. He has passed a graduate or postgraduate course or its equivalent examination having a degree in commerce. So you are a BCom or MCom, or law, LLB, or banking including higher auditing, or business administration, MBA, or business management from any Indian university established by any law for the time being in force. So you are either BCom, MCom, LLB, or the banking degree that you have, or business management degree, okay, from Indian university, not foreign. So Harvard will not count, Nagpur University will count. Or a degree examination of any foreign university recognized by Indian university as equivalent to degree examination mentioned in subclause 1. So you can have a foreign university degree also which is recognized by an Indian university. So if Harvard degree is recognized by Indian university, then fine, otherwise not. Or any other examination notified by the government on the recommendation of the council for this purpose. So government is going to bring in a new degree program for GST, and you pass that. Or has passed any of the following exams, namely final examination of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, you are a CA, or final exam of the Cost Accountants of India, you are CWA, or now all called as CMA, or final exam of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, means you are a CS. So you may not be a member, you may not be a practitioner, means you may not have a certificate of practice, but you have passed the exam, that's it. If you have passed the exams, then you can become a GST practitioner. Okay. Then on receipt of the application, the officer authorized on this behalf shall, after making such inquiry as he may consider necessary, either enroll the applicant as a GST practitioner or issue a certificate to that effect in PCT2, or reject his application where it is found that the application is not qualified. You give a fake CA degree, then you will be disqualified. So he will reject your application. Then subrule 3 says that the enrollment made under subrule 2 shall be valid until it is cancelled. Once you are enrolled, the enrollment is valid until you get it cancelled or the officer cancels it. Provided that no person enrolled as a goods and service tax practitioner shall be eligible to remain enrolled unless he passes such examination conducted at such periods and by such authority as may be notified by the Commissioner on the recommendations of the Council. So if you are registered once, say for example, you have to continuously pass exams at regular intervals which will be prescribed by the Commissioner. Say if they specify it every 3 years. So every 3 years you have to reappear for an exam and clear that exam. If you don't clear that exam, then your enrollment will stand cancelled. Okay. And provided further that no person to whom the provisions of clause B of sub-rule 1 apply shall be eligible to remain enrolled unless he passes the said examination within a period of 18 months from the appointed date. If you are enrolled under clause B of sub-rule 1, then you have to pass this exam within 18 months. So who is specified in sub-rule 1 clause B? See, this person, clause B, that he has enrolled as a sales tax practitioner or a tax return preparer under the existing law for the period of not less than 5 years. So this person who has been registered, one who was a sales tax practitioner or a return preparer under the existing laws, the old laws, for a period of more than 5 years, then he would be automatically registered here. But then he will also have to pass the exam. He will also have to pass the exam within 18 months of the appointed date. The appointed date means when this whole system of examination is put into place and the date is notified. So once it is notified, that becomes the appointed date, and within 18 months even the old sales tax practitioners will have to pass this exam. Okay. Then if any goods and services practitioner is found guilty of misconduct in connection with any proceeding under the Act, the authorized officer may, after giving him a notice to show cause in PCT 3 for such misconduct and after giving an opportunity of being heard, by order in form PCT 4, direct that he shall henceforth be disqualified under section 48 to function as a practitioner. Means if you are found doing any misconduct like filing wrong returns on behalf of your clients, you can be disqualified. And any person against whom an order under 4 is made may within 30 days appeal to Commissioner against such order. You have a right to appeal. And any registered person at his option authorize a goods and services practitioner on the common portal in PCT 5 at the time, withdraw such authorization in the PCT 5, and the goods and services practitioners who authorize shall be allowed to undertake such tasks as indicated in the said authorization during the period of the authorization. That is simple. This is the manner of authorization. You have to give a declaration in PCT 5. And where a statement required to be furnished by registered person has been furnished by the practitioner, a confirmation shall be sought from the registered person over email or SMS, and the statement furnished by the practitioner shall be made available to the said person on common portal. Means if you authorize the practitioner and practitioner files some documents, a message will come to you, SMS and an email, which you will have to confirm that yes, I have authorized my practitioner to file these statements. Provided that where the registered person fails to respond to the request of confirmation till the last day of the furnishing of the statement, it shall be deemed that he has confirmed the statement. So the information came to you, the email came, the SMS came, and you did not confirm the email, then till the last day, then it will be deemed that you have confirmed. So on the last day it will be deemed that you have confirmed. So if you think that the practitioner has not filed the correct statement, that you have not authorized him to do so, then you have to go and reject it. That's important. If you don't reject, it will be deemed to have been accepted. Then the most important sub-rule 8. Mark it as very important, because a direct question can come on this point, that what are the activities that can be undertaken by a GST practitioner. Okay, so a lot of points are given here. Let's see one by one. A goods and services tax practitioner can undertake any or all of the following activities on behalf of the registered person, if so authorized by him, of course. Number 1, furnish details of outward and inward supplies, that is section 37 and 38. Then furnish monthly, quarterly, annual or final returns, 39, 42, 43, etc. all the types of returns that were there. Then make deposit for credit into electronic cash ledger. He can deposit cash also on behalf of the authorized person into his electronic cash ledger. Cash means it can be paid by check also. Then file claim for refund. Refund claim can be filed by him on behalf of the registered person. Then file an application for amendment or cancellation of registration also. He can file application for amendment as well as cancellation. Then furnish information for generation of e-way bill. Then furnish details of challan in form ITC 4. File an application for amendment or cancellation of enrollment under section 58, and file an intimation to pay tax under the composition scheme, or withdraw from this said scheme. So all these things can be done by GST practitioner. Very important question can come here, 4 marks question, that what are the activities that he can perform. So you have to just mention here. Then provided that where an application relating to claim for refund or an application for amendment or cancellation of registration, or where the intimation to pay tax under composition scheme or withdrawal from the composition scheme has been submitted by the practitioner authorized by the registered person, a confirmation shall be sought from the registered person and the application submitted by the practitioner shall be made available to the registered person on the common portal, and such application shall not be further proceeded with until the registered person gives his consent to the same. So even though the practitioner might submit these documents, but they will come for approval with the authorized person on his common portal, and only when he authorizes it, it will be finally taken into consideration, right? Simple. Then 9 says any registered person opting to furnish his return to practitioner shall give his consent in PCT 5 to the practitioner, and before confirming submission of any statement prepared by the practitioner, ensure that the facts mentioned in the return are true and correct. So this is your job, you should do it. And if you think they are not correct, then you can stop the return. But if you don't do anything, then it is deemed to be filed on the last day. Then the practitioner shall prepare the statement with due diligence. This is his responsibility, with due diligence, and affix his digital signature on the statement prepared by him or electronically verify using his credentials. And lastly, it says that the practitioner enrolled in any other state or union territory shall be treated as enrolled in the state or union territory for the purpose of it. Means if you are registered as a practitioner in the state of Maharashtra, you can also work in any other state or union territory. Then conditions for purposes of appearance. No person shall be eligible to attend before any authority as a practitioner in connection with any proceeding under the Act on behalf of any registered or unregistered person unless he has been enrolled under section 83, rule 83. So this is a negative sentence, that if you are not enrolled as a practitioner, you cannot stand, you cannot attend on behalf of any person. Secondly, a goods and services practitioner attending on behalf of a registered or an unregistered person in any proceeding under the Act before any authority shall produce before such authority a copy of the authorization under PCT 5. So PCT 5 is just like Wakalatnama. So he has to present one copy to the officer, that look, I am the practitioner and I've been authorized. And then the small chart is given to explain all those points. which you can just go through. And a little bit of explanation part is also given at the end. That's what we have already seen. So again, I would say at the end that return is a fairly important chapter, and the weightage will range from 4 to 6 marks in the exam. Okay, so do it accordingly.